Hi folks, Christoph the Polish Geek, and happy July 4th, happy Independence Day to all of my American friends and subscribers. Actually, even more special Independence Day because technically 250th anniversary of the United States of America. So yes, there are plenty of local events happening right now in the United States all over the country. It's a very special July 4th. Again, 250th anniversary of the United States of America, the country I lived in for 8 years actually, and also what I decided to do for July 4th actually, and again, even more special that it's 250th anniversary, because what I decided to do, the way I decided to celebrate Independence Day July 4th in Poland here, I decided to review Assassin's Creed 3. Assassin's Creed is a franchise I've been a huge fan for a very long time, and at this point I think the franchise should retire. Like, they've been declining in quality for a long time, but whatever, I decided that it's perfect to celebrate Independence Day with the review of Assassin's Creed 3. Considering that Assassin's Creed 3 takes place in American Revolution, it doesn't get more perfect for July 4th than that. But what makes it even more special is that the game came out exactly at the time when I lived in the United States actually, because yes, when I lived in the United States for 8 years, I lived for 3 years in Rhode Island and then in Vermont. And I actually went to boarding school in Rhode Island actually, and I remember I got Assassin's Creed 3 then actually, and the game actually takes place in Boston and New York, so yeah, in the areas of New England. I mean, New York technically is in New England, but Boston, Massachusetts very much is, and the school was kind of 2 hours away from Boston, and I frequently went there, so that makes it even more special. But once again, you can't get more perfect for Independence Day than Assassin's Creed 3. Again, the game is about American Revolution, so that alone, it already makes it a perfect July 4th material. But also, once again, as I said, it came out when I lived in the United States and remember playing it then actually, so yep, again, perfect for July 4th. And what we're going to be looking in this game is, does it hold up? Because back when I played it, back in the day when it first came out, I remember very much loving this game and saying, oh, second best game of all Assassin's Creed series, only next to Assassin's Creed 2. But does it hold up though? Do I still feel the same way about the game now replaying it actually? How has it aged? Because again, I did review Assassin's Creed 2 on this channel, and with that game I can say with confidence that it aged amazingly well, like a fine wine, outside of some outdated graphics for some people, which for me is not a problem. But can the same thing be said about Assassin's Creed 3? I was a long-time Assassin's Creed fan. I actually stayed with the franchise far longer than most fans. In fact, I remember how when Assassin's Creed 3 came out, that's when several of my friends who were also fans actually didn't want to buy it because they didn't like the early franchise frame. That was not the case for me. I was super hyped and bought it and loved it and went as far as saying that it was tied for the best one together with Assassin's Creed 2. That opinion has aged badly though, and we will take a look if it is really as good as I remember, because if I'm being honest, it's not as great as I remember it. Like, Assassin's Creed 2 is as amazing as I remember, and I reviewed it only a year ago, but unfortunately, I can't say the same thing about Assassin's Creed 3. There certainly are things to love here, quite a lot actually, but again, it's not as good as I remember it, and it's certainly not as good as its predecessor Assassin's Creed 2 or successor Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, and that certainly doesn't help matters when it's sandwiched between two really amazing games in the franchise. In fact, largely due to hype and being excited to play in the American Revolution setting, I think that very much blinded me to the game's plenty of flaws, but also maybe admittedly because that's when actually we had far less games in the franchise back then, so I didn't have as many things to compare it to as I do now. But again, I still very much do love the game, and things I loved back in the day are still very much strongly present here. At the same time, I also do see plenty of flaws, especially in regards to the story actually, that I either didn't notice or maybe just turned a blind eye. Positives first though. Things I loved back in the day, I still very much do love now. Well, most of them. I still think that the American Revolution setting is excellent. Fighting the Brits is so much fun, and there are even battle sequences when Connor just joins Americans to fight the British, and they are really amazing, even if combat itself is kinda a mixed bag, but we'll get to that later. But it truly feels like the Patriot in the video game form. And I love the idea of Connor being an Indian. I mean, his real name is like Ratohang. Can't pronounce that, but...
My name is Radohangado.
Right. Well, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that.
That was a pretty unique thing and very much differs him from prior protagonists. Combine it with a beautiful setting of American wilderness or American towns, including New York and Boston, being given the same immersive treatment that Italian cities got in Ezio games. It was quite different from Assassin's Creed 2, while still maintaining core things that make Assassin's Creed recognizable, and that's what I love so much about it. Entirely new setting, an awesome historical period combined with entirely new, unique environments, because again, the previous games, Brotherhood and Revelations, at this point they pretty much feel like just expansions of Assassin's Creed 2, which they kinda did already back then anyway. So once again, Assassin's Creed 3 was basically fresh and new. And the setting is still amazing, as are the visuals and graphics. I mean, still not as good as in Assassin's Creed Unity, but certainly an upgrade from previous games. I mean, natural, since it's a later game. I mean, at that time it was the latest game in the franchise. The actual story, though, is a mixed bag. I remember how blinded I was when I first was playing the game, because in concept it should have been perfect if done well. Like Connor being an Indian made him a very different from prior protagonists, and then him joining an assassin brotherhood and the Grandmaster of the Templar Order being his European father Hytham Kenway.
Father. Connor. Any last words? Wait.
Plus, of course, meeting all the founding fathers, including Paul Revere, Samuel Adams,
Samuel Adams, at your service.
Benjamin Franklin, and of course, the first president of the United States, George Washington himself, and then
To our newly appointed Commander-in-Chief, George Washington.
Ah, so you're the one who saved Sam and John at Lexington.
fighting alongside them all for the independence of the United States before it was even created. Yeah, those were really excellent ideas that should have worked very well if only the writers bothered to make Connor interesting. Problem is, he isn't that well written. I mean, I'm not one of those people who will needlessly just hate on him, because he actually starts as a pretty likable character actually, and it makes sense for him to be traumatized after seeing his mother dead as a kid, and he's certainly a good person who cares about doing the right thing. So yeah, I'm not one of those people that will just say Connor is a terrible, unlikable, boring character. Again, he starts as pretty likable actually, but the biggest problem with him is that he never really grows as a character, like contrasted with his grandfather Edward Kenway, or Ezio Auditore, or even Altair. Connor doesn't really change throughout the story. He's pretty much the same guy he was in the beginning of the game, and him belonging to the Assassin Brotherhood feels so forced. It doesn't feel like he actually cares about the ideas of the Brotherhood, which makes one wonder, why does he remain with them? Is it really a good Assassin's Creed game if a protagonist doesn't care for the Brotherhood? Like, by the end of the game, we would expect Connor to be a wise assassin mentor who puts his grievances behind him. Plus, why does he hate Charles Lee with such a burning passion, even after it's revealed that Charles Lee had nothing to do with the village burning? On a side note, I hate that reveal very much. Like, I see no reason why couldn't just Charles Lee be the one that burned Connor's village all along, other than shock value. Plus, if it was Charles Lee, it could also open the door to another interesting storyline of Charles Lee going into conflict with his boss, Hytham Kenway, considering that Hytham had a romance with Connor's mother, and their romance is how Connor was born in the first place. Again, I do like Connor. He certainly has a very noble heart and he had a huge potential, but the problem is he never grows as a character, and it seems it's more about thinking Assassin Brotherhood would protect his people instead of actually growing to believe in its code and philosophy. I mean, Perhaps you can make an argument though that we needed to see more of his future adventures, since we do know in the future he does eventually rebuild the Brotherhood in the Americas and becomes a mentor assassin, but we never get to actually see that play out. It would be really beneficial to actually see it play out though. Again, possibly because plenty of people didn't like Connor, that the creators never bothered to create his further adventures, even if possibly that was actually the intention. Who knows? What works really well for me in Assassin's Creed 3 though is the Templars. Like, one of the core themes of Assassin's Creed 2 was how far the Templars strayed from their ideals and how they just became power-hungry villains. But here, the Templars do really believe in the Templar cause, to the point that assassinating them genuinely makes you somewhat feel guilty and question how much do they actually deserve to be assassinated. Like, the first 3 sequences you actually play as Connor's father, Hytham Kenway, without knowing he's a Templar Grandmaster, which was an amazing idea and truly can show you things from the Templar perspective. Some fans went as far as saying that Hytham's sections were better.
Give me your hand. You are a Templar. May the Father of Understanding guide us.
May the Father of Understanding guide us.
Wait, what?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go that far, but he certainly is more likable protagonist than Connor, especially in later sections, but I don't blame it on him being the protagonist. I blame it on Connor not being a very well written character. I often complain how I don't like it when villains are sympathetic, but this is very different, because back in the day, sympathetic villains were in common. Like how I already brought up Assassin's Creed 2, where Templars were evil and power hungry, so now portraying Templars as genuine believers in their cause was a very nice change, and it was actually unique. So the way the Templars are portrayed here is excellent and a really nice change from how they were portrayed in Assassin's Creed 2. Again, I did love their portrayal in Assassin's Creed 2, but you need some change. Things get boring if they always stay the same. So yeah, making the Templars sympathetic and genuine believers in their cause, then I think it makes perfect sense in Assassin's Creed 3. Plus, there is one unsympathetic Templar, Thomas Hickey, who is only for the sake of money in the whole thing.
How should I know? The Templars, Lee, the big man, Haytham, they has the money, they has the power. That's the reason I threw in with them. That's the only reason. Sure, they have some sort of vision for the future too. I didn't give a damn about any of that.
And most importantly, Hytham sections already have 2 really unsympathetic and vile villains in the form of Silas Thatcher and Edward Braddock, both very violent, despicable villains on par with the ones in Assassin's Creed 2, and assassinating them as Hytham is so satisfying. Again, plenty of parts in the story are still really good. Still, could use a much better written protagonist and give him a better character development, and the part of Lee not being responsible for burning of Connor's village is completely needless twist that doesn't change actual story but brings some plot holes and kinda ruins the villainous character. It might seem like I'm ranting about the story, but don't get the wrong idea. I do like this story, and I do think it has great ideas, and I do like Connor. I think he's a really likable and well-meaning character. At the same time, I do think some things could have used more fleshing out, especially Connor belonging to the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, because like Connor, for example, learning that colonists don't care for his people but still choosing to side with them since he sees the truth about the Templars in their worldview. Like, yeah, those are really great ideas and very consistent with the themes of Assassin's Creed lore. They just would benefit from better execution. Like, duel between Connor and his father Hytham is really great. It's so emotional as Connor is fighting his own father, and both actually do respect each other and even somewhat love each other as father and son, but their philosophies and worldview are so world apart, and both father and son choose to stay true to their ideals and how the world should work. And the conversation they have is so fascinating and very consistent and relevant to Assassin's Creed lore and themes of order, control, and unity versus freedom, which also is disturbingly relevant to the modern day with how global elites try to control humanity. As for the modern day story, well, it's certainly essential. It's the conclusion of Desmond Miles' arc when really modern day was at its most interesting in the series anyway. Let's face it, nobody gave shit about modern day ever since Desmond died. What I certainly don't like about modern day story though is Lucy's betrayal. I've been ranting on it before already, but Lucy gets killed at the end of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, but we don't know much about it. But this game confirms that Lucy was a traitor all along, which again, I hate that choice. It just feels so out of character and makes all the scenes with her so much less fun and makes you invested in her character and relationship with Desmond far less. Well, can't change what is already done, but what I do like in the modern day story on the other hand is how much more gameplay active it is now, with Desmond straight up fighting Templars in the modern day and using the techniques that he learned while reliving the memories of his ancestors, and also especially that we are finally getting a chance to kill that asshole Warren Vidic once and for all. Still remember playing it back in 2012 for the first time and already finding it so satisfying. And it also shows how much Desmond has grown over the course of the games and how reliving the memories of his ancestors paid off in his day. And also, seeing Desmond's father William is pretty interesting, and the ending of Desmond preventing the end of the world is pretty cool, especially that again, that was 2012, both in the game and in the real world, and we all know of the Mayan calendar prophecy and how everybody was predicting the end of the world. Thanks Desmond, I guess. Although, those were the very, very early days where we were about to be bombarded with the PC crap being shoved in everywhere. The gameplay is also a mixed bag, though I actually lean more towards positivity here. I do really love the open world and exploration for sure, and roaming around the wilderness around northeastern United States area, mostly Massachusetts, it's so fun and immersive. And again, as someone who lived in the United States, and actually in those areas, I lived in Rhode Island and then Vermont, and often went hiking in those areas, as well as Massachusetts and New Hampshire, I can tell you that they done a great job at recreating this feel of New England American wilderness. Actually, I lived in the United States during the time of playing the game actually, so it was quite interesting to both be playing this game while living in those areas. And I also like how there is this immersive, realistic survival element as when Connor wanders the wilderness of northeastern United States, or America I guess, since that's right before USA actually is about to be established. So, but yes, there are also those wild animals that attack Connor, and it gives this feeling of classic Indian way of surviving in the wilderness and hunting wild animals and climbing trees and rocks. And what's also pretty cool is that season changes, as does the area in relation to the season, and while it's recognizably the same area, when winter comes, it's all snowy and leaves from the trees are gone, and walking in the snow is slower. Connor doesn't get cold, but gameplay reasons, whatever. Still, the attention to detail with the wilderness and season changing is pretty stunning. Of course, walking around the cities here is cool as well. While previous games were mostly confined to big Renaissance cities of Italy and Turkey in Curse of Revelations, Assassin's Creed 3 happening in America, the cities are now Boston and New York, of course, and it's a wonder to see how different New York was to how it is now, from regular 18th century folk city to now a giant skyscrapers and loud music. Boston, though, is pretty recognizable. Again, maybe because I've been to Boston a lot of times, and I like when the creator tried to do with Connor and how to control him. Again, Connor being an Indian, he both looks unique and feels unique and very different from an Italian aristocrat Ezio Auditore, and he has very few animations and moves, and sometimes he also feels like a predator. Again, pretty consistent with who he actually is and his experiences in the wilderness. And once again, I do love walking around the wilderness of northeastern United States, as well as 18th century versions of American cities like Boston and New York. But there are several things I'm not a huge fan of. I did say that I really like what they tried to do with controlling Connor, but the end result is ultimately a mixed bag to me, especially with the combat. Like, with the combat, it's especially a mixed bag. Like, sometimes I feel like I really love the combat and I'm really enjoying myself while fighting enemies. But then there are other times where I do kind of feel really annoyed, because the combat has potential and I do love the weapon variety. As Hytham, you have a sword, a hidden blade, and a rifle, and as Connor, you still get similar weapons, but instead of a sword, you get a Indian tomahawk, for example, which is actually my personal preferred weapon of choice. And I like the death animations of enemies with how Connor uses his tomahawk, for example. And I love how, depending on the weapon that Connor or Hytham use, the death animations are quite different, fitting with the weapon used. Unfortunately though, sometimes it feels slow and tedious at times. Like in Assassin's Creed Unity, the combat was pretty challenging, but it was also very fluid and like you were in full control of Arno. While here, sometimes you feel like a Superman with the way you control Connor, but other times it feels like the computer deliberately is delaying your attacks, and it feels like enemies then have an advantage over you. Just as in Assassin's Creed 2, you fully control Ezio, and while it is pretty easy, but it is also a lot of fun. But here it does feel like Connor attacks with very delayed responses after you press the buttons, while enemies basically attack you right away without any delays. And it's kind of a shame too, because again, there is a huge weapon variety here, and again, death animations and Connor's actual moves are pretty good, especially that oftentimes Connor feels like a really wild predator with the way he attacks his enemies with his weapons. I mean, natural, since he's an Indian raised in the wilderness, and when fighting a single enemy or two, then Connor, as I said, feels completely unstoppable, but if fighting too many, it feels like opposite is the case. I mean, again, if you press the button at the right time, then Connor can just basically kill every enemy in one hit, but it has to be pressed at a very specific time, and if you fail, enemies gang up on you and have an advantage. Thankfully, the game's successor, Assassin's Creed Black Flag, very much maintained similar combat, but removed all of its downside, which is why the combat in Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Rogue is so great. Here it feels like a mix of Unity's realistic combat and Black Flag's unstoppable assassin one. Again, I don't hate the combat, and I actually do like elements of it, and sometimes it does feel really fun, but it does also feel like it actually needed some tweaks. And Assassin's Creed 3 is actually the game in the series that introduced ship sailing and naval combat, which soon became a defining aspect of the game's successor, Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Though sailing and naval combat is nowhere near as fun and engaging as it is in Black Flag, but that's natural since there are only very few naval sections here, so the creators didn't need to polish and refine it as well as they needed to in Black Flag. Like, if Black Flag had exactly this type of sailing and ship combat as this game, then I can say with confidence it would not become the beloved title in the series that it is. Still, again, at this point, the developers were only experimenting with the idea, and there are only very few naval sections in the game, so they are quite fun and interesting addition, even if, again, the naval gameplay is nowhere near as polished and refined as it is in Black Flag. The worst and most annoying gameplay factor in Assassin's Creed 3 though is stealth. Like, stealth here is probably the worst in the series. It almost feels as if the developers didn't really much focus on actually developing stealth in this game and mostly just put it in the game because it's an Assassin's Creed game, so you need stealth, even if, again, it feels like they very much put it in the backlog while focusing on developing other things in the gameplay without putting much care into stealth. Like, for example, if you assassinate even a single enemy, then the whole group who is nearby already knows that you're there and they will all gang up on Connor, which generally triggers a conflict with many enemies, which is generally nearly impossible to win. And also, even if an enemy even slightly notices you, then you can't hide anywhere like in the bush because Connor immediately stands up as if to deliberately reveal himself to an enemy. And again, worse yet, if that said enemy fully sees you, and he likely will, then all enemies in the area will too and generally follow him and gang up on Connor. Yep, stealth here is pretty terrible actually. Again, possibly the worst part in the game, together with the dumb plot twist. I seen an excuse that Connor was never a true assassin and his mentor was an angry old man, and that's why he's not particularly good at being stealthy. But well, again, that's the problem of the writing, not the gameplay, and certainly wasn't intentional. Admittedly, there also aren't that many assassination targets and missions, which actually is another problem. Like, there are only like 5 assassination targets in the entire game. I mean, isn't assassinating Templars one of the things that we love about those games in the first place? I gotta be honest, and ultimately I have to say Assassin's Creed 3 isn't quite as great as I felt about it back in the day when I first played it and beaten it. While it has a great story concept design and some really interesting new ideas, as well as a really cool setting and amazing, fascinating historical time period and really pretty visuals, but ultimately held back by a protagonist, again with a potential but not executed perfectly well as some weird story choices that I didn't care for, and some annoying gameplay mechanics ultimately prevents me from saying that this game is among the best the series has to offer. But also, I have to admit that I've beaten the game actually before some of the series' best games like Assassin's Creed Black Flag and my personal favorite one, Assassin's Creed Unity and Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Assassin's Creed Origins, that was only before all those games were out, and again, that was freshly after there were plenty of Ezio games from Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood and Revelations, that also the part that I was just hungry for an entirely new historical setting could have also admittedly played a huge part in why I praised the game and loved it so much when I first played it. And now admittedly it might seem like I don't really like the game anymore, but don't get the wrong idea, and that's just not true. I still think the game is pretty good overall, and there is still a lot to love here. At the same time, I don't think it's quite as great as it was back in the day when I first beaten it, and again, admittedly, it might be because ever since then, a lot of really amazing new entries in the series came out. But whatever, I still think it's a quite good game, had a really good time replaying it, and will be happy to replay it again at some point in the future. And one more thing, once again, happy July 4th, Independence Day, and 250th anniversary to all my American friends and subscribers. Kinda wish I actually could visit United States again and hang out with friends in all those activities, but alas, it's also Soccer World Cup there, so it would be likely too crowded. Anyway, my next visit to United States will likely be more likely in the fall, or maybe 2027, like around March or April. Who knows, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm no doubt coming back to the United States to visit some old friends at some point. Like, my connection to that country is just too strong. That's why, once again, happy July 4th, Independence Day to all my American friends and subscribers. Talk to you soon in another video, and God bless America.